For the average mover, wrestling boxes and furniture is a normal part of moving into a new home. In fact, it takes the average household roughly 2 to 8 weeks from initial planning to final settlement in the new home. This timeline includes 1 to 4 weeks for planning and packing, 1 day for the actual move, and 1 to 2 weeks for unpacking and settling in. For those moving into the White House, though, things are quite different. As crazy as it sounds, it takes only 5 hours to move the last president out and settle the new president's family in. The process typically happens very quickly, often within a few hours on Inauguration Day. While the outgoing president and their family vacate the premises, the incoming president's staff and family begin moving in. This includes setting up the residence, making security changes, and installing new equipment. When the outgoing president moves out of the White House, their personal belongings, furniture, and other items are carefully packed and transported. The transition team works to ensure that everything is properly cataloged and moved out in an organized manner. In some cases, the outgoing president may choose to take certain items with them, while others are left behind. We'll talk more about that later. The move-out process involves careful coordination to ensure that nothing is left behind or misplaced. Security is a major consideration during the transition. This is why new security measures are immediately implemented as the incoming president moves into the White House. The Secret Service plays a significant role in overseeing these changes, which may include modifying security systems, adding new communications equipment, and adjusting personnel. These security steps ensure that the new administration is fully protected right from the moment they take office. The new First Family's preferences and needs are an essential part of the moving process. This includes setting up the White House residence to accommodate the family's lifestyle, including selecting furniture, arranging living spaces, and making any necessary modifications. The process also involves preparing personal spaces, such as bedrooms where the president and his family relax, bathrooms, and offices, ensuring that the new president and their family feel at home in the residence. Matthew Costello, a senior historian at the White House, says the 5-hour move in and out process has become the standard operating procedure over the last few decades. He goes on to say it can be chaotic, but it's always very coordinated. Sarah Polis with The Hill says the hyper-organized effort is orchestrated by the White House chief usher. She says that usually the moving plans begin as soon as the outgoing president concedes to the newly elected president. Everything from the incoming First Family's choice of furniture and room layout to minute details including their ideal room temperature, favorite snacks, and preferred bath soap are obtained ahead of time by the chief usher, who works with the incoming First Lady on readying the home. The incoming family is often brought out to review the White House's permanent collection, a small portion of which is kept on site, but is primarily housed off-site in Maryland. There, they are able to select furniture and artwork to utilize in their new residence. Usually the day begins for the about 90 to 100 permanent White House resident staffers early as 4 a.m. on January 20. At this time, workers start to make any necessary cosmetic changes or repairs. The day's official scheduling begins around 8:30 a.m. when the staff gathers to wish the incumbent presidential family goodbye. During the ceremony, staffers typically give the outgoing president a gift in the form of a box constructed from historic White House wood that contains the flags that flew over the White House on the president's Inauguration Day and final morning in office. This is a tradition started by White House Chief Usher Gary Walters, who was a Reagan appointee and served under 4 administrations. Meanwhile, the president-elect and his family traditionally start the morning of January 20 with a prayer at St. John's Church. Following Mass, the incoming president and First Lady head to the White House, where the incumbent First Family typically welcomes them with a formal tea. From around 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., moving trucks are positioned nearby. The movers wait for the signal to advance onto White House property. Around 10:30 a.m., both families typically leave the North Portico together and head toward the Capitol. At this point, the actual moving process begins. First, empty trucks are loaded with the outgoing president's belongings. Any pieces that were on loan from the White House's permanent collection are shipped back to the federal storage facility. Outgoing First Families are not able to keep pieces from the White House's permanent collection as they are property of the United States government. If the outgoing president received gifts from a foreign dignitary during his term, those items tend to be obtained by the National Archives. If a president is particularly fond of a gift, he is sometimes able to purchase it for the determined market value. The extent that the White House has been packed up ahead of time varies by administration. However, most outgoing first families have their belongings ready to go by the time the moving trucks arrive. When the move-out process is complete, the incoming president's items are moved into the executive residence. The team of outside movers tends to be rather small and comprises only a handful of people, since the White House's permanent residence staff handles the majority of the work. Due to security issues and the historic nature of many of the items, it's necessary for insiders to be the ones to bring furnishings into and out of the White House. Rooms are rearranged according to the incoming first family's preference, everything from wall colors to room layouts. If a president and first lady want a room changed into a private study or gym, those changes are implemented at this time. Typically, the majority of the changes are made to the White House's private residence. Presidents and first ladies have generally left the state floor alone since it is the public floor, and those spaces have stayed fairly consistent since the Kennedy administration. Typically, the entire process is carried out in a matter of fewer than 5 hours, with multiple teams in place to handle every specific aspect of the coordinated effort. Following the swearing-in ceremony and congressional luncheon, the new first family returns to the White House, usually between 3 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. By that time, the move must be fully complete. The first family is welcomed into their new home by staff and shown upstairs to their living corridors. The family then moves to the residence's viewing platform, from which they take in the inaugural parade with their guests. Following the parade, the first family returns inside to begin preparing for that evening's inaugural ball. Kate Anderson Bauer, a journalist and New York Times bestseller, describes the transition inside the residence as an incredibly choreographed routine that takes place every 4 to 8 years by a staff of roughly 100 butlers, ushers, and housekeepers. They stock the kitchen with the new president's favorite foods and the bathroom with his favorite shampoo. She goes on to reiterate that it's the staff that does the move. As the president's being sworn in on Capitol Hill, it's the White House staff who is physically moving headboards, mattresses, unpacking clothes, hanging them in the closets. It's such a grueling and stressful process. Brower said the head of operations at the White House once told her that the best transition is when there's no transition and the incumbent is re-elected for another 4 years. Anita McBride, who served as Chief of Staff to First Lady Laura Bush, said the White House is a living museum, steeped in great history. But it is constantly evolving, and every new first family that comes in gets to put their own imprint on it. How do you feel about the White House transition process? Are you someone who's involved in moving or event coordination? Or maybe you're just fascinated by the logistics behind it all? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.